All right, we're getting ready for STAAR, and here we have TEK A.2A, which is domain and range of linear functions. We're going to skip down. There are several types of domain and range questions. We're going to start with the easiest kind, which is where we're given a graph. We read the question: which inequality best represents the domain? You have to remember that domain means X. The other word that we'll come across is range, and range is Y. We can tell the difference. G has the hang down as the Y does. Domain does not have anything that looks like a Y, so X is domain, range is Y. Alright, so since we know that it's asking us what domain values, what X values, we're looking at the X axis, which is this axis. So we're going to squish this line to the X axis. This open circle comes down to the 9. This closed circle comes up to the 2. And the line is squished down to everything between those two values. So our domain would be from -9. And then over here is 2, X is in the middle, and it's everything in between. Now, we use less than or equal to because it's a closed circle here. What should this symbol be because it's an open circle? It is not shaded in. Well, since it's not shaded in, it should not have the equal to signal underneath it. We know the answer is F. We're going to find another one that is a graph. Alright, so in this problem it's asking what is the range. We know that range is Y, so we're going to look at the Y axis. That's this axis. So we're going to take the graph. This dot is already on the Y axis. This dot over here is going to squish over to the Y axis, and then the line is pressed to the Y axis. So what numbers were used? Well, everything from 0 all the way to 9. Y is in the middle. They're both closed circles, so it's everything in between. We read the answers. All real numbers greater than 0 and less than 28. No. 28, that would have been the Y, so that's the domain. That would have been the X, rather. So that's the domain. All real numbers greater or equal to 9. That's the answer that we had said. Alright, here's another one. On this one it's asking us for range. That's Y. We're looking at the Y axis here. So we squish the entire graph over to the Y axis. That closed circle comes there. This closed circle is here. This one gets squished over, but it really doesn't matter because the entire line is getting moved over. So it's just everything in between. From this -3 is the lowest value, 4 is the highest value, and it's everything in between. And they're less than or equal to because it's a closed circle and a closed circle. The answer choice that is correct is G. Just want to point out to you that they're going to give you some distractor answers. That would have been, if it was just the dots, then it could have been these two. But since it's the line, it's also everything in between those points. And we can also say that because it's asking for range, any of them that have the X aren't even in the right ballpark. Alright. Now that we've done the graph problems, we're going to come back up and we'll start the other type of domain range question. This first one is kind of an in-between. It doesn't have a graph, but it gives you the equation, and so graphing it is actually going to be the best way to do this one. So you would graph that, draw a little graph. This is Y is equal to -37, so it'd be, we don't want to draw 37, so just dot, dot, dot. It'll be somewhere down here, and it's a horizontal line down at -37 going sideways. You can obviously graph that in your graphing calculator as well and change the window so you can see that far down. Now, in this one, it's asking for both domain, which is x, and range, which is y. So looking at this graph going sideways, the domain, if we squish this line up to this axis, then it's going to be going in both directions on our x-axis. So that means it used every number. It goes to the left forever, to the right forever, and everything in between. So that would be all real numbers for our domain. This one says all real numbers greater than or equal to negative 37. No, it's not. There's no barrier on it. This says it's just negative 37. No. C says all real numbers, and D says all real numbers. Correct. All right, we're going to look at range. On this one, range is our y-axis here. So we squish both of these things to the middle, and it's just going to end up being a dot. When we squish this over here, it's still there. It's all on the same number, so it's just 37. So it's not all real numbers greater than or equal to that. It's just 37. So D is the answer. All right, the true second type of question is where we have a word problem and we're having to try and figure out a scenario. So we have a daily cost of hiring. Y is the people. X is the hours. The plumber charges a fixed cost. Okay, that means it's a one-time cost and an additional cost of $45 per hour. So we're going to write our linear equation. Y is equal to a fixed cost of 80. That's the one-time fee. So whatever the charge is plus the 80 that you had to pay, and 45 per hour. Per is the indication that it's going to be repeating. So we'll put an X next to it. $45 for each hour. So every X, every hour times the 45 that it's per hour, and then we add the fee that we had to pay. And so it's saying, what is the range? So we're thinking that range is y. So we're asking for these values. What would be the reasonable outputs of this problem? Well, what are the hours that we could work? Could we work 0 hours? Sure. Could we work 1 hour? Sure. 2 hours? Sure. 3 hours? So if it was asking, it says a maximum of 8. This could continue all the way up to 8. If it was asking for domain, we would have the answer already. But it is asking for range, so we're going to look for what is the output when we plug in these domain values. So it's 45 times 0, that's 0, plus 80 would be 80. That's our first output. Our second output, when we plug in a 1 for our x, 45 times 1 plus 80, what do we get? Another number, and another number, and another number. We can keep going until what? The reason we don't have to find what these inside values are is because it asks for the range, so we need to know what the lowest value is, and we need to know what the highest value is. And since it said a maximum of 8, 8 would be the next one that we can plug in. We end up getting 8 times 45, and if you can't do that in your head, you get your calculator. 8 times 45, hit enter. We get 360. So that's 360 plus 80. 360 plus 80, 440. So we take a look at our answer choices. We've got the lowest number would be 80, the highest number would be 440. It's talking about range, so we have a y in the middle. It's everything in between. And part of the question we can think is, should it have the equal to underneath it? One, all of your answer choices have that, so you would know it needs to be, but also just from the context of the equation, the scenario, you would know. The answer would be B. All right, the next question is another one of these word problems. This time they give us the equation, so that's nice. It asks for the range. So domain is X, range is Y, so we're looking for the outputs. In the scenario, it's talking about a set of weights, includes a 4-pound barbell, 6 pairs of weights. Each pair of plates adds 20 pounds. And so now they want to know what the range. So in this scenario, we first have to figure out what we're going to plug in for our x values. Well, we have 6 pairs of weights, so you could either put on 0 weights, you could put on 1 pair, you could put on 2 pairs, so on until you get to your 6th pair. It wants to know what the output is, so we plug in a 0 first. 20 times 0 is 0 plus 4, so that would give us a 4. Plug in a 1. 20 times 1 is 20 plus 4 is 24. And we can already take a look at our answer choices and see it wouldn't be 0 through 6. That would be domain. 4, 24, and it would continue. Wouldn't be this. 4, it skipped. It's got 44. The answer choice is B without even having to plug in the rest of them. All right, the next question is another one of these word problem scenarios. It gives us the equation again, which is nice. Now on this one, some students get tripped up because it doesn't have an x or a y. So they say, well, what's the domain and range? It's asking for domain, which is x. But you know the format of this equation. Y equals mx plus b. The domain value in this scenario would be the u. That's domain, because it's in the place where the x would be. All right, it says if there are at least 8 players, but not more than 12, what is the domain for this function? Well, so we have to first figure, we know domain is u, but what is u? Well, in this case, u is the number of uniforms. So uniforms, and then C is cost. Uniforms would be, if we have 8 players, how many uniforms would we have to buy? 8. So the U, in that case, would be 8. The most uniforms we would have to buy would be 12. And we would have to get everything in between. So it would be either 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. So which answer choice is correct? H. All right. Working to the last 2 questions. Number 34, a plane can carry a maximum cargo weight. This is technically asking for domain. It's a type of question where you can think it through logically. A plane can only hold 160,000 and no more. And it carries 2,000-pound containers. So on this side we have 2,000-pound containers. How many containers? Well, we don't know, so we put a variable there. However many containers times 2,000. That cannot exceed 160,000. So this side, the number of containers is smaller, the small side smaller than 160,000. And it asks what's the greatest value for the domain. The domain is our x. And so we divide by 2,000, divide by 2,000, and we end up with x must be less than or equal to 80. 80 is the most, the number of containers. So the reason this is a domain and range question is because you had to know what domain was, what it was looking for, but then to figure it out, you just had to think logically through it. All right, for our last question, it's asking us for what the domain is again. That's our x. And this is the easiest of all of them because it's just got some points. And everybody from middle school even knows that it's x comma y, x comma y. So if it's asking for domain, that's just all of our x values. 52, 72, 86, 105. That is H. All right, that is TEK A.2A.